everyone, I'm Madison. Thank you for clicking on my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in January and February of 2025. I also have my reading journal here because I do have a few statistics that I actually kept up on this year to talk about as well in my reading wrap-ups because I didn't do them in previous years and I find it kind of interesting and entertaining to know. So the first book that I actually picked up in 2025 was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I know this book was popular back in 2022, I want to say? A couple years ago. And I did actually purchase this book when it was popular, but then it sat collecting dust on my shelves until January when I finally decided to pick it up. This book is about a figure skater and a hockey player, and it's their romance. It's set in a college town, and as many people know, and if you don't know, don't let the cover fool you, this book is incredibly spicy. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Honestly, it should just be a 3-star book, maybe even a 2.5. I didn't really care for this. The romance was there, but it was very lust-filled. Very lusty because it was just smut on smut on smut on smut. Not a lot of plot, not a lot going on for a 400-page romance. Would I read again? No. The next book that I read in January was Daydream by Hannah Grace. I did skip Wildfire. I just had no interest in picking that one up, and yeah. I don't think I'll ever read that, and I don't think I'll continue this series either if more books do come out. But I did give this one 4 stars. This is about another hockey player and a more introverted girl. She's a people pleaser and she ends up helping him with schoolwork. This one, a lot less spice, so much better plot. The characters were actually interesting and they had depth to them. I really enjoyed this one. Is it my favorite romance? No, but I liked it. So after that, I decided to pick up fantasy to kind of change it up a little bit. And so I picked up Lightlark by Alex Astor. This book has become quite popular again. It came out a couple years ago, but the 3rd book in this series just came out. It was originally supposed to be a trilogy, and then the author announced that it's actually going to be a 5-book series. I have not decided if I'm going to continue this. I gave this 3 stars. It wasn't anything new. It wasn't anything really that interesting. It is a love triangle, and I am not a fan of those. I know who I'm rooting for in this world, and yeah, it's just kind of boring. It's about an island that pops up every 100 years, and all of these leaders of these different islands come to Lightlark to battle, essentially, to break the curse, because they all have different curses. Yeah, it's just the characters didn't have a lot of depth. It was very surface level. It was definitely YA. I don't know. I do own Nightbane. I don't know if I will read it. We will find out. And then the last book that I decided to pick up in January should be no shocker, as it was a new release. That is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This book was so entertaining. So fast-paced. I stayed up till 3 in the morning to finish it. I gave this 5 stars, of course. Now, is this my favorite fantasy series ever? The answer is no. I'm actually not a big Xaden fan. I find him to be kind of toxic. I know, not the majority opinion, but I still really enjoyed the books, and I loved the side characters in this one. Riddick. I love Riddick so much, and I think a lot of people, getting back into this book, the first 50 to 100 pages was confusing, and that is because I didn't do a reread of Iron Flame. I didn't really like Iron Flame that much. It was a good book, but I thought it was a lot going on, a lot of words, etc. It was more politics-based, that book, so I just didn't care for it as much. Anyways, so yeah, I was a little confused when I got into this, but once I started to, remember things and got into the flow of this book, I thought that it was very well paced. I don't think there was anything boring going on. Like, yeah, there were like mini adventures and things like that like occurred, but I feel like all of it has a purpose. I feel like Rebecca Yarros is one of those authors that writes fantasy with full intention of what the ending is going to be, and she knows everything that she wants to put in there. Everything has a purpose. A lot like Sarah J. Maas does with her books and her series. I know Brandon Sanderson does the same thing. A lot of good authors that write really long series, I feel like Rebecca Yarros has that in her writing that it's just so good and so interesting. Yeah, 5 stars. I could rant and rave about this book forever. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I don't know. I could talk about it forever, but I loved that book. And then as for statistics that I have going in my reading journal, for January, I had listened to 2 audiobooks. I read 1 ebook, so on my Kindle, and then 1 physical book. And then as for genres, you can tell 2 romance books, 1 fantasy, and 1 young adult fantasy. And then for the month of January, I read 1,838 pages. I love knowing page count. That is so important to me. So, because my goal every year is to read a higher page count, which I've done so far. And then moving on to the books that I read in February. So, real quick, my reading goal this year is to read 50 books. Last year, my reading goal was to read 55. I just decided that I'm going to set it at 50, and if I exceed it, I exceed it. I just kind of don't want to put a lot of pressure on myself. I really want to read for enjoyment this year, etc. You know? So that's kind of the plan. I only read 4 books in January, but I did end up reading 5 in February. So that's going to be kind of my reading average for most months. I tend to read the most in the month of July, like 8 books. That's a lot for me, and that seems to be my trend, is to read the most in that month because of summer, I guess. But yeah, just so you have context of like how many books I tend to read. So in February, the first book that I picked up was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. So I really wanted to read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, but my friend Kenzie has read all of these, and she was like, you need to read them in order to have better context of the characters, because it's an interconnected standalone series. I don't really care for this one. I believe, let me see, what did I give it? I gave it 3.5 stars. The female main character is a doctor, and then the male main character is a townie in like a small town. He like does a lot of odd jobs, odds and ends. I don't want to like give too much away. He's a very like down-to-earth guy, and she's just, her privilege shows. She ends up acknowledging her privilege in the story. That's like a thing, like it's obvious that that's going to happen. It's not a spoiler. But her privilege was just incredibly frustrating, and the conflict in this, besides, you know, I've heard that Abby Jimenez is big on miscommunication trope, and I hate that trope, and I've heard that she's also just like a big third act conflict kind of author, and I'm not a big fan. That's why I like Elsie Silver's books, is because the conflicts are never like directly breaking up, like they're realistic. This was a stupid reason, and if they had just spoken to each other like adults, it would have been resolved. But the female main character just really frustrated me, because she was so adamant that because she's older, that she can't be with him and blah blah blah. When in reality, she was the one that was acting like a child and not using her brain. Frankly, it was incredibly frustrating, in my opinion. So I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I would probably bring this one down to a 3. It wasn't as frustrating as Icebreaker for me, but this was not my favorite introduction to Abby Jimenez's books, so hopefully I end up liking other ones more. So the next book that I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is my 3rd Emily Henry book, and she continues to be a 5-star author for me. One of my favorites. I loved this book. If you are a reader and you really like banter, and you haven't really found an Emily Henry book that you've liked yet, say you picked up, I have not read People We Meet on Vacation yet, but I've heard that a lot of people don't really care for that one. Say that's your first introduction to it, and you don't really care for it, and you're like, I don't know if she's the author for me, but you love banter. So good. Both characters are from New York, but they end up in this small town. I don't want to give much away, but it's about an editor. He's an editor. She is a literary agent. And it's just so good. She's kind of like an ice queen, and he's kind of a broody asshole, but they kind of warm up to each other, and it's just so good. I'm so glad that I read this when I did. I actually had picked this book up 2 other times and got about 100 pages into it and then put it down for no other reason than I just wasn't in the mood. And when I read certain authors, I want to give the book my full attention. I want to fully annotate it, etc. And so that's why I put it down, and I'm so glad that I picked it up when I did, because I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was so funny because the witty banter was there. Emily Henry's banter is just so good. I could preach this book forever. My current Emily Henry standing, as I said, I've only read 3 books. I still have yet to read Happy Place and People We Meet on Vacation, and then obviously when Great Big Beautiful Life comes out, I will be picking that up as well. But my current standing, I would say Funny Story is number 1, Book Lovers is number 2, and Beach Read is number 3 for me. I know that that's not the typical for a lot of people, but the banter was way more interesting to me in this one than Beach Read. Beach Read was my first MHEM book, and I still like that book a lot, but the depth of characters for Funny Story in this one, they just hit home for me. So I could continue to rant about this, but I will not. So after that, a new release came out that I've been anticipating. Scythe and Sparrow, excuse me. Is it Scythe or Scythe? I believe it's Scythe, but I keep saying Scythe. Anyways, Scythe and Sparrow by Bryn Weaver came out, and this was so cute. It was definitely the lightest of the trilogy. This is the Ruinous Love trilogy. It is a series about serial killers falling in love with each other. It's very rom-com, like dark rom-com, I guess is what you would consider it. Yeah, check the trigger warnings if you get easily grossed out by stuff for the entire series, but these 2 are so fun and so cute, and I was giggling and kicking my feet. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's about a girl who, is a carnival chick. She does, biking in a carnival, and then, or a circus, circus. And he is a doctor, and his brothers are serial killers, and his brothers are serial killers. Holy cow, me trying to explain this. Very stumbling over my words. Anyways, I loved this. This was the end to the trilogy. If you want to know my opinions on the trilogy, Butcher and Blackbird is still my favorite, but Scythe and Sparrow comes in at number 2 for me, and then Leather and Lark at last. Needless to say, I did enjoy this entire trilogy, and I thought it was all fun, but Butcher and Blackbird will hold a special place in my heart forever because it was the first book in the series, and Rowan is just so funny. And then the last 2 books that I read in February, you guys will be very proud of me that I finally picked these up, because this was the Throne of Glass tandem read. I enjoyed this so much, I could cry about it. I have not picked up Kingdom of Ash yet. I have prepped the book for my annotations and everything, but mentally I am not ready to give up these characters, so I'm holding on to that book for a little bit longer before I read it. Ugh, I could cry. I love them so much. I do not understand. I know some people that have totally skipped Tower of Dawn, and I just, how? How, when, where, why? So much happens in this book. Chaol is not as annoying. He's an annoying character. Don't get me wrong. But there are other characters in this book that are so important to, I'm sure, the rest of this story, and definitely to this world in general. There's so much information in this one that you definitely don't get in this one. Please read it. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, and then, I love this. Oh my gosh. Just bury me with this in Queen of Shadows and I'll be happy. I fully annotated this one, if you cannot tell. I have been annotating this entire series. If you can't see, they're over here next to Magnolia, of course. I've been annotating these go there as well. This was 5 stars for me. Empire of Storms follows a lot of characters, but specifically Aelin and Rowan and Dorian and Manon. Yeah, I don't want to give anything away, but this one follows those characters. And then Tower of Dawn, I gave 4 stars. I did really enjoy this book, just not as much of Empire of Storms. But this one follows Chaol Westfall and Nesryn Philique and their story and the things that they're learning, because the group does split up at the end of Queen of Shadows, and this is their stories. I did tandem read this, so I was bouncing back and forth between the two, and I did do the immersive reading where I was reading along with an audiobook. 10 out of 10 recommend. That made the reading experience so much better, and I did, I finished these at 3 in the morning as well, and this really got me out of my Onyx Storm reading slump, so I'm so happy. But yeah, those are the last 2 books that I read in February, and those are some large books. As for the month of February, stats, I read 2 audiobooks, or listened to 2 audiobooks, and I had 3 physical reads. Like I said, I did the immersive situation for Throne of Glass for those 2 books, but I did physically read them. So yeah, they're counting as physical reads. As for genres, 3 were romance and 2 were young adult fantasy. Throne of Glass is considered young adult. Yeah. And then as for pages read in the month of February, I read 2,484 pages. And that is my reading wrap up for January and February. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.